It was a quiet Thursday evening at Maplewood Diner, the kind of place where the smell of fresh coffee floats in the air and the neon signs buzz softly against the windows. A few regulars sat scattered around the room, enjoying their usual orders. The atmosphere was calm, predictable, almost too normal. Then the door opened with a soft chime. A young deaf girl, maybe 16 or 17, stepped inside. She wore a simple hoodie, her hair tied in a loose ponytail, and she clutched her small notepad tightly against her chest. Her eyes scanned the room, nervous but hopeful, before she walked toward the ordering counter. The waitress smiled gently. "Hi, sweetheart. What can I get for you?" The girl opened her notepad and pointed to a neatly written sentence. "Can I have pancakes with strawberries, please?" She added a shy smile, then used a few soft hand signs to thank her. A couple of men sitting at a nearby booth noticed her. They exchanged looks, smirked, and nudged each other. At first, they only stared, but soon the whispering started. "Look at her arms waving around." One of them said loudly enough for half the diner to hear. The other laughed. "What is she doing? Dancing while ordering food?" People glanced over, uneasy, but no one spoke up. The girl's smile faded slightly, though she pretended she didn't notice. She quietly took a seat near the window and waited for her meal, fingers tapping nervously on the table. The two men didn't stop. They began mimicking her hand movements, exaggerating them like a joke. One waved his arms wildly. The other made nonsensical noises, rolling his eyes back as if mocking her disability. Their laughter echoed across the diner. The girl stiffened in her seat. She lowered her head, clutching her notepad protectively. Her hands, which had been so gentle and expressive moments ago, now hid under the table. The waitress shot the men an angry look, but she didn't dare confront them. The manager wasn't around, and the diner had a strict, no-conflict policy. But there was one person who had been silent the entire time. A man sitting in a shadowed corner booth, wearing a black jacket, sipping tea calmly. His eyes had been locked on the scene from the moment the girl walked in. None of the bullies knew. The waitress placed the plate of pancakes gently in front of the deaf girl. Fresh strawberries glistened on top, syrup dripping down the sides. For a moment, the girl smiled again, just a small, fragile smile, the kind you give yourself as reassurance. She signed, "Thank you," softly with a grateful nod. But the peace didn't last. The two men in the booth, one with a scruffy beard, the other overweight and dressed in a worn-out basketball jersey, were watching her like hawks. Only these weren't hawks. They were vultures circling someone they thought couldn't fight back. "Hey, look," the bearded one snickered. "She's doing her secret hand code again." The guy in the jersey burst out laughing. "Secret code? Bro, she's probably calling aliens." Their voices rose above every other sound in the diner. Forks paused in midair. Conversations died. The entire room tightened, yet no one stepped in. The girl froze. Her fork hovered halfway between her plate and her mouth. Her eyes lowered, shoulders curling inward as if she wished she could disappear into the vinyl seat. The men kept going. Jersey guy cupped his ears dramatically. "Hello," he shouted. "Can you hear me?" He leaned forward, waving his hands in slow, mocking gestures. "Or do you only understand this?" He flapped his hands randomly, making childish noises. More laughter. The bearded man slapped the table so hard his drink shook. "Dude, stop. You're gonna make me choke." The waitress glared again, but fear weighed on her expression. She whispered to a coworker near the kitchen door. "Someone needs to do something." Her coworker whispered back, "Are you crazy? Those guys come here every week. They cause trouble. We're not allowed to escalate." Meanwhile, the girl tried to shrink into herself. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with that deep, familiar pain people get when the world becomes too cruel, too quickly. She had probably lived through moments like this many times, but that doesn't make them hurt any less. Still, she lowered her head and tried to eat, pretending she didn't hear, or rather, pretending she wasn't aware of the hatred aimed at her. But the men grew louder. "Hey," Jersey guy called out to her. "Can you teach me those hand things?" He moved his fingers clumsily, deliberately sloppy, pretending to sign. "What does this mean, huh?" The girl looked up just long enough to show fear behind her eyes. Bearded man smirked. "It means she's broken, dude." He then made a high-pitched, babbling sound that had nothing to do with any language at all. The kind of sound intended only to demean. It was cruel, pointless, pure bullying. The girl shook her head and reached into her backpack. She took out her notepad, her only tool to bridge communication. She flipped to a page that said, "Please stop." She held it up timidly, hands trembling. The whole diner watched. Jersey guy snorted. "Ah, look." She wrote a little note. He reached toward her with fake sympathy. "Sweetheart, we're just having fun. You know, you people are so sensitive." "You people," he said again louder. Bearded man clapped sarcastically. "Bravo. She can write English." The girl quickly pulled the notepad back to her chest. Her breathing grew shallow. And still, no one moved. The waitress stood behind the counter, torn. An old couple stared in disgust, but said nothing. A teenager recording from the corner tried to zoom in discreetly, but none of them did anything. That's how bullies thrive, on silence. Except, in the shadowy booth near the back, Steven Seagal placed his teacup down with deliberate calm. His eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with a cold, controlled focus. The kind of look that said he had seen enough. But he still didn't move. Not yet. The bullies weren't finished. The bearded man leaned back and boomed. "Hey, sweetheart. If you can't hear us, just wave your hands like you did earlier." He flailed his arms wildly, the whole diner cringing. Jersey guy suddenly stood, walked toward her table, and snatched the notepad right out of her hands. A loud gasp swept across the diner. The girl immediately reached for it, desperate, but he pulled it out of reach. "Well, what do we have here?" he said, flipping through her pages. Dozens of sentences were written inside, some in proper English, some in shaky handwriting, some translations of sign language. Bearded man joined him, reading mockingly. "My name is Lily. I like drawing. Please speak slowly. Oh man, this is pathetic." People gasped again. The girl's face turned red, humiliation burning like fire. She stood up, shaking, hands signing rapidly, pleading. But the men only imitated her signs like slapstick comedy. Then bearded man held up her notepad like a trophy. "This yours? How about we give it back if you dance for us again like you did at the counter?" The entire diner froze. Someone whispered, "This is disgusting." Another said, "Why isn't anyone doing something?" Still Steven Seagal stayed seated, silent, watching, evaluating. He finally pushed his chair back, slow, deliberate, dangerous like a storm building in silence. But before he rose fully, Jersey guy took the girl's notepad and tossed it across the floor. It slid under a booth. The girl gasped silently, her hands flying to her mouth. Her shoulders trembled violently now, pain cracking through her expression. The bullies burst into laughter again. They had crossed a line. The diner didn't know it yet. But the moment that notepad hit the floor, Steven Seagal decided to stand up. The diner went completely silent as the deaf girl stared at her notepad lying under the booth across the room. Her breathing quickened, her eyes wide with panic. That small book wasn't just paper, it was her voice. Her way of communicating with a world that often refused to slow down and understand her. Without it, she felt voiceless, invisible. Her hands rose instinctively, trembling as she signed, "Please give it back." But the bullies only doubled over with laughter. Bearded man clutched his stomach. "Oh, look at her. She's putting on a whole show now." Jersey guy laughed even harder. "Maybe she's casting a spell on us. Someone record this. This is comedy gold." He turned and smirked at the teenager recording in the corner. "Zoom in, kid. You don't get entertainment like this every day." The teenager shrank back, ashamed, and lowered his phone. The girl wiped at her eyes quickly, not wanting anyone to see her breaking. She took a small step toward her fallen notepad, but then stopped, frozen as Jersey Guy stepped deliberately into her path. He loomed over her, blocking the aisle with his broad chest. "Where do you think you're going?" he taunted. She tried signing again, hands shaking violently now, but he leaned in and mocked her movements with exaggerated, clumsy gestures, twisting his face like a clown. The humiliation deepened. Her fingers curled inward. Her body trembled. She wasn't scared for her safety. She was scared of the cruelty. Across the room, Steven Seagal had finally risen to his feet. Slowly, deliberately. His leather jacket stretched slightly as he straightened his spine, and his boots made a dull, heavy sound on the wooden floor. He didn't speak yet. He didn't need to. His presence alone shifted the air, like a storm cloud rolling over a sunny field. But the bullies hadn't noticed him, yet. Everyone else had. The waitress's eyes widened. She knew who he was. The old couple whispered urgently to each other. Even the teenager froze, gripping his phone with white knuckles. Steven took one step forward, then another. The diner felt each footstep, but he wasn't rushing. Steven Seagal never rushed. He moved with that same quiet, controlled intensity he'd shown in every film, like a man who only acted when action was absolutely necessary. Jersey Guy finally noticed the eyes of the room shifting behind him. He glanced over his shoulder, annoyed. "What are you all staring at?" But before he could understand, Bearded Man pointed. "Dude, look." Jersey Guy turned fully and came face to face with Steven Seagal. Steven stood tall, hands relaxed but ready at his sides. His face was calm, eerily calm. His eyes, sharp and unreadable, were fixed directly on Jersey Guy. The bully blinked. A flicker of confusion crossed his face. "Wait, are you?" Steven spoke softly, his voice calm, yet heavy enough to stop the room cold. "Put the girl's notepad back." No shouting, no anger, just a controlled, unshakable command. Jersey Guy puffed out his chest. "What's it to you, old man?" Steven's eyes narrowed by a hair. "That young lady came here to eat in peace. You took something that belongs to her. Return it." Bearded Man scoffed. "Bro, calm down. We're just messing around." "Yeah," Jersey Guy chimed in. "It's a joke. Don't get involved, man." Steven took another step forward. It was slow, but somehow it felt like the ground itself tensed under his weight. He glanced at the girl, who was now trembling beside him. She wasn't crying, but her eyes shone with fear and helplessness. Steven's voice dropped lower, controlled with deep authority. "You think bullying a child makes you strong?" Jersey Guy swallowed, suddenly unsure. The entire diner held its breath. Steven continued. "You mock her for something she didn't choose. You steal her words. You take her dignity." His arms remained still at his sides, yet the tension around him felt explosive. That's not strength. That's weakness hiding inside a loud mouth. Bearded Man laughed nervously. "Look, man, we didn't know she was, deaf." Steven didn't blink. "You didn't care." A chilling stillness swept through the room. The bullies exchanged uneasy glances. Jersey Guy tried to regain confidence. "Look, we're just..." Steven cut him off gently. "If you want to bully someone..." He stepped forward again. "Try someone who can hear you. Someone who can understand you." He squared his shoulders slightly. "Try me." The bully's bravado flickered like a dying bulb. Bearded Man shifted uncomfortably. All right. Chill. No need to act tough." Steven raised an eyebrow. "I'm not acting." That line hit them hard. A few customers gasped quietly behind their booths. Jersey Guy finally cracked, lowering his voice. Okay, we'll give the notepad back." Steven didn't move. He simply tilted his head toward the booth where the notepad lay. Jersey Guy walked toward it like a guilty child. Every step felt heavier than the last. He bent down, picked up the notepad, and held it awkwardly in his hands. Steven didn't take it from him. "Give it to her." Jersey Guy swallowed hard and approached the girl. She stepped back instinctively, eyes full of anxiety. The bully extended the notepad toward her. Here." She hesitated, then took it quickly, hugging it close to her chest. Steven nodded once. Now apologize. Bearded man snorted. Dude, no. This is too. Stephen looked at him. Just one look. Bearded man's sentence died mid-word. His face paled. He turned to the girl and muttered, Sorry. Jersey guy echoed in a shaky voice. Yeah, sorry. The girl didn't sign back. She simply nodded, her shoulders still trembling but grateful. The diner was dead silent. But the moment wasn't over. Because Steven Seagal hadn't even started yet. For a few long seconds, the diner stayed frozen in a fragile, uneasy quiet, like a room holding its breath. The apology had been spoken. The notepad was back in the girl's hands. Most people would have seen the situation as finished. But the bullies weren't most people. Jersey guy rubbed the back of his neck, clearly embarrassed in front of the whole diner. His cheeks were flushed an angry red, and his jaw tightened the more he looked at Steven Seagal. Humiliation does strange things to a weak man. Bearded man leaned closer to him and whispered, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. You gonna let this old action star embarrass you like that? Is this the part where he breaks our arms? Please. A few customers gasped. Steven didn't react, but his stillness was louder than any shout. Jersey guy snorted, trying to reclaim some bravado. Man, whatever. This whole place is full of weirdos. He stepped backward, bumping into a chair, and his irritation flared. Come on, he muttered to his friend. Let's just go? This place sucks anyway. Bearded man shrugged. Yeah, grab the food to go. I'm starving. They began to move toward the exit. The girl, still clutching her notepad and shaking, watched them carefully, unsure if she was safe or if this nightmare was about to restart. Steven didn't move, didn't block their path, didn't taunt them. He simply watched them walk. But pride, wounded pride, is a dangerous thing. Just when the bullies reached the door, Jersey guy turned around one last time. He pointed at the girl, then at Steven. You two deserve each other, he spat. Freak show and her bodyguard. The diner collectively inhaled. Steven's jaw flexed. The girl flinched, head dipping like she'd been struck. Bearded man added with a laugh. Yeah, tough guy. Bet you're used to defending little helpless fans, huh? Hollywood hero. Why don't you? He didn't finish his sentence. Steven stepped forward once. A small step, but it was enough to silence the room. His voice was calm, too calm. You had a chance to walk away with dignity, he said softly. You should have taken it. Jersey guy's smirk faltered. You threatening us? Steven tilted his head slightly. If I were threatening you. He paused. You'd know. A chill rippled through the entire diner. Bearded man barked a laugh, trying to regain momentum. Man, you think you're in a movie right now? You ain't intimidating anybody. He stepped forward and jabbed a finger toward Steven's chest. Bad choice. Steven didn't hit him, didn't break anything, didn't even touch him. He simply lifted a hand and gently, almost casually, redirected the man's wrist downward, twisting it at an angle that made bearded man stumble. The bully yelped, dropping to one knee, pain shooting up his arm. Steven hadn't even used force. That hurt. Steven asked quietly. Bearded man grimaced. Why, yeah. Steven raised an eyebrow. Imagine how she felt. Jersey guy growled, charging forward. The girl gasped. The waitress screamed. But Steven Seagal was still, serene, like he'd been expecting exactly this. As Jersey guy swung a wild punch, Steven shifted his weight a fraction of an inch. The fist missed by a mile. Steven's response was fluid, effortless. A light tap to the man's forearm that sent him stumbling off balance. Jersey guy tripped over a chair and crashed onto the floor, groaning. The teenager in the corner whispered, Whoa, that was like magic. But Steven didn't look proud, didn't pose, didn't grin. He simply stood there, calm as ever, hands back at his sides. Violence is never my first choice, he said quietly. But bullying someone who can't defend herself. He glanced at the girl. That's where I draw the line. Bearded man was wheezing, clutching his wrist. Jersey guy crawled up to his knees, dizzy. The waitress stepped forward hesitantly. Sir, should I call the police? Steven shook his head. No need. He looked at the bullies with a steady, unblinking intensity. You're going to leave this diner, he said. You're not going to bother this girl again. His voice deepened slightly. And you're going to think very carefully about the kind of men you want to be. The bullies exchanged shaky glances. Jersey guy muttered, breathless, man, whatever. Let's just get out of here before he breaks something. Bearded man nodded vigorously. Yeah, I'm done. They scrambled to their feet, half running out the door. The bell jingled frantically behind them as it swung shut. For a moment, the entire diner was silent. No fork scraping plates. No murmurs. No movement. Just silence. Then the teenager whispered reverently. That was awesome. Suddenly, the diner erupted in soft applause. Not loud, not theatrical, gentle and grateful, the kind that said, thank you. We were too afraid to act. But you weren't. The deaf girl looked up at Stephen with wide, shining eyes. Her hands moved slowly, delicately. Thank you for helping me. Stephen nodded with warmth in his eyes and signed back. Clumsy, imperfect, but heartfelt. You're safe. The girl's lips parted in surprise. Steven Seagal, new sign language? Not well. Not fluently. But enough. Enough to show kindness. Enough to show respect. The girl's eyes filled with tears, not of fear, but of relief. Stephen smiled softly. Let's get you seated. Your food's getting cold. He guided her gently toward her booth. The diner slowly returned to life, people whispering, smiling, shaking their heads in disbelief. But somewhere outside, just beyond the windows, the bullies hadn't left the parking lot, and the night was far from over. Outside the Maplewood Diner, the parking lot was quiet, lit only by a few flickering streetlights and the neon glow from the windows. A cold wind moved across the pavement, carrying the distant hum of passing cars. Inside, customers were calming down, the atmosphere slowly returning to normal. But not everyone had calmed down. Jersey guy and bearded man paced angrily near their truck, red-faced and furious. You kidding me? Jersey guy barked, kicking a tire. I'm not letting some washed-up movie star punk me out in front of everyone. Bearded man massaged his sore wrist, wincing with every movement. Man, he embarrassed us. Those people were recording. This is going to be online. They both froze at the thought. Their humiliation wouldn't stay in that diner. It would spread, be shared, mocked. Jersey guy's rage simmered deeper. No way. We're going back in there. I don't care who he is. Bearded man hesitated. Dude, it's Steven Seagal. So what? Jersey guy snapped. He's old. He ain't in his movies anymore. What's he gonna do? Meditate at us? Bearded man swallowed hard but nodded. Fine, but we go in together. Inside the diner, Steven sat across from the deaf girl, watching to make sure she was all right. She wrote something on her notepad and showed it to him. Why did they do that? I didn't hurt anyone. His face softened. Steven took a pen from the table and wrote gently beneath her sentence. Cruel people don't need reasons. But brave people don't need excuses. The girl smiled faintly, just barely, but it was the first real smile she'd shown. The waitress approached. Sir, you were amazing back there. I've never seen anyone shut down bullies like that. Steven shook his head. I just did what anyone should do. The teenager chimed in from a nearby booth. Nah, man, you did what everyone wished they could do. Steven didn't respond. He wasn't a hero in his mind, just a man who hated injustice. But then, the diner door burst open. The bell above it slammed against the frame with a violent clang. Gasps escaped from every corner. The girl stiffened in her seat. The waitress grabbed the counter for support. Jersey guy and bearded man stormed inside, angrier, louder, and far less ashamed than before. Steven didn't flinch. He simply turned his head slowly, resting his calm stare on them. Jersey guy jabbed a finger at him. We're not done, old man. Bearded man sneered. You think you can treat us like garbage? Make us apologize? Embarrass us? Steven let out a quiet breath. You embarrassed yourselves. Jersey guy slammed his fist on a table, making glasses rattle. Stand up. The diner collectively held its breath. The teenage boy whispered, "Don't do it, man." But Stephen rose slowly, without anger, without fear, without urgency, just presence. Quiet, powerful presence. Jersey guy snarled, "You think you're stronger than us?" "No," Stephen said calmly. Bearded man laughed. "No? Then what? I think I care more than you ever will." Jersey guy took a step closer. "You think that makes you better?" Stephen shook his head. "No, but it makes me responsible." The bullies exchanged confused looks. Stephen continued, voice low and steady. "You walk into a diner. You bully a girl who can't hear your insults. You mock her disability. Then you come back for more." He stared deeply into their eyes. "That doesn't make you men. It makes you cowards." Bearded man's face twisted with fury. "Say that again." Stephen looked almost sad as he repeated softly, "Cowards." That was enough. Jersey guy lunged. The girl gasped and covered her mouth. The waitress screamed. The teenager yelled, "Watch out." But once again, Stephen didn't move until the very last second. Then, a pivot, a sidestep, a fluid motion. Jersey guy went crashing into a booth, smashing into the cushions with a grunt. Bearded man rushed next, swinging wildly. Stephen caught his wrist, again, redirected the momentum, and lightly pushed his shoulder. The man tumbled backward, sprawling over a table, sending napkins and silverware flying. Still, Stephen never hit them. He never struck once. He simply stepped aside, guided their movements, and let their own aggression defeat them. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Jersey guy, dazed, pulled himself up. His chest heaved. You freak," he shouted. "We'll sue. We'll get you arrested." Stephen raised his eyebrows. "For what? Defending myself? Or stopping you from hurting a girl half your size?" The girl watched with wide eyes, hands trembling. But now there was something new in her expression. Trust. For the first time that night, she felt safe. Jersey guy wiped blood from his lip. "This isn't over. You hear me? We're calling backup." But Stephen's voice stopped him at the door. "Make sure they're real backup," he said calmly. "Not more cowards." The bullies stumbled out, slamming the door behind them. The diner stayed silent again, overwhelmed, shaken, but filled with a strange new energy. Stephen walked back to the girl. She wrote a message and held it up with trembling hands. "Are they coming back?" Stephen looked her in the eyes. "No," he said softly, "because the next people who come through that door." He nodded toward the windows, where red and blue lights began flashing. "Won't be here for you. They would be here for the bullies." And the night was about to take an unexpected turn. The flashing red and blue lights grew brighter as two police cruisers rolled into the Maplewood Diner parking lot. Conversations inside went silent. Every customer who had witnessed the earlier confrontation exchanged nervous glances. The deaf girl clutched her notepad tightly, eyes fixed on Stephen. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of them returning with reinforcements. Stephen placed a calm hand on the table, signaling her to stay seated. "You're safe," he said softly. "I promise you're safe." The diner door opened. Two officers stepped inside, Officer Ramirez and Officer Collins, both seasoned, professional, and carrying the kind of presence that instantly quieted a room. Behind them stumbled Jersey guy and bearded man, playing up their injuries like actors desperate for sympathy. "There, that's him," Jersey guy said, pointing at Stephen dramatically. "He attacked us. This guy, this so-called martial arts legend, just assaulted us for no reason." Bearded man nodded vigorously, limping exaggeratedly. "Yeah, we were just minding our own business." He snapped. "He's dangerous." Stephen didn't move, didn't blink, didn't defend himself. He simply waited. Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow and glanced around the diner. Dozens of people stared back at him with the exact same expression. Disbelief. Officer Collins turned to the customers. "Is that true? Did this man attack them unprovoked?" The waitress stepped forward immediately. "No, sir. Not even close." The teenager chimed in, nearly jumping out of his booth. They were bullying a deaf girl, making fun of her. Then they tried to start a fight with him. Other customers nodded, voices rising with anger. They mocked her. They wouldn't leave her alone. He told them to stop. They came back and attacked him. He didn't even hit them. They fell on their own. Officer Ramirez frowned and looked at the girl. She held up her notepad with trembling hands. They made fun of my sign language. I was scared. The officers' faces shifted instantly, anger flashing beneath their professionalism. Jersey guy sputtered. You're seriously taking their side? Look at my face. Look at my lip. Officer Collins didn't even bother hiding his irritation. Sir, most of your injuries look like they came from falling into furniture, not from being struck. The teenager whispered loudly from his booth, because Stephen didn't even hit them. They just launched themselves like idiots. Several customers stifled laughs. Jersey guy glared. Oh, come on. You expect me to believe this old man didn't lay a finger on us? Officer Ramirez asked calmly. Sir, do you know who this man is? Jersey guy scoffed. Some washed-up actor. No, Ramirez said, his voice flat. He's a reserve deputy chief in multiple counties. He's worked with law enforcement for years. He has trained officers, military personnel, and security teams worldwide. Bearded man blinked, color draining from his face. Jersey guy swallowed loudly. Wait, for real? Stephen finally spoke, his voice calm but edged with iron. I don't care about titles. What matters is that you don't terrorize a young girl simply because she communicates differently. The deaf girl's eyes glistened. Officer Collins turned to the bullies. You lied to us. You wasted emergency resources. And you caused a public disturbance. Ramirez crossed his arms. That's 3 charges already. Jersey guy's bravado evaporated instantly. Hey, we didn't know. We thought that she was an easy target? Stephen asked quietly. The entire diner went dead silent. Jersey guy's mouth opened, but no words came out. Ramirez stepped forward. Unless you want to spend the night in holding, I suggest you calm down and listen. Bearded man raised his hands. Look, we just made a joke, okay? Things got out of hand. A joke, Stephen repeated. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard the cold anger beneath it. You call mocking her disability a joke? Bearded man shrank back as if struck. The diner customers began murmuring angrily, whispering things like, disgusting. They should be ashamed. Imagine if someone treated their kids like that. Officer Collins sighed. Sir, the crowd's testimony is clear. Security cameras from the diner will confirm everything. Jersey guy snapped his head toward the ceiling. There are cameras. The waitress smirked. 6 of them. And 2 of them, Stephen added calmly, faced the exact area where you mocked her. Jersey guy paled completely. Okay. We're sorry. All right. We're sorry. Bearded man nodded quickly. We didn't mean it. We were just messing around. Stephen stared at them, not with hatred, but with something worse, disappointment. You don't get to rewrite your intentions after the damage is done. The 2 bullies looked like children scolded in front of a classroom. Officer Ramirez tapped his ticket pad. Here's what's happening. You 2 are banned from this diner. You will receive citations for disorderly conduct and harassment. And if you ever attempt to retaliate or contact this girl again, you will be arrested. Jersey guy groaned, defeated. Bearded man held his injured wrist, shaking. The officers escorted them toward the door. But before they left, the deaf girl lifted her notepad and wrote something fast. Stephen saw it first. She held it up. I forgive you. Even Officer Collins froze. Stephen looked at her, stunned. Are you sure? She nodded slowly, her eyes soft, not weak, but incredibly strong. Jersey guy stopped in his tracks. His eyes flicked to the words, and for the first time that night, he looked ashamed, properly ashamed. He lowered his head. We're sorry. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was real. The officers led them out. As the doors shut, the tension in the diner melted away like steam from a hot cup of coffee. People exhaled. Some wiped their eyes. Others smiled at the brave girl. Stephen sat back down across from her. She wrote one last note and slid it to him. You protected me, but you also taught them. Thank you. Stephen smiled gently. No, he said. You taught everyone tonight. Outside, the cruisers pulled away. And inside, the diner felt warmer, safer, brighter than it had all night. The chaos of the night slowly faded, replaced by a gentle calm that settled over the Maplewood diner. Customers finally relaxed, sipping their drinks, whispering about what they had witnessed. The air felt lighter, as if a storm had passed and left clarity behind. Stephen sat quietly across from the deaf girl as she ate her pancakes, cold by now, but she didn't seem to mind. Every few minutes, she looked up at him with a small, grateful smile. When she finished, she wrote something on her notepad and carefully slid it across the table. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Stephen exhaled softly. His eyes held both warmth and sadness. I helped you, he said, because too many people look away when someone is hurting. And sometimes, all it takes is one person to say, enough. She nodded slowly, letting the words sink in. Around them, the diners were still buzzing, some recording TikToks about what happened, others telling their families over FaceTime, and a few simply watching the two at the booth with admiration. The waitress walked over with a bright smile. Your meal is on us, sweetheart, she told the girl gently. And Stephen, thank you. You reminded us what courage looks like. Stephen shook his head. Courage isn't loud. It's quiet. It's choosing kindness even when the world doesn't. The teenager who had been filming the entire time suddenly approached, holding his phone awkwardly. Sir? The video is already going viral. Like, really viral. Millions of views. People are calling you a hero. Stephen sighed with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who didn't stay silent. But the girl wrote quickly. That is a hero. Stephen looked at her, unable to hide a small smile. Just then, the diner door swung open again, this time gently, and the manager rushed in, breathless. I heard everything. I'm so sorry you had to experience that, he told the girl. Then he turned to Stephen. Thank you for stepping in. We should all do better. More customers approached too, some offering hugs, others simply saying thank you or God bless you. The girl looked overwhelmed, but for once, not with fear, only with appreciation. Stephen stood slowly. Let's get you home, he said softly. The girl nodded, gathering her notepad. When she stood, the entire diner seemed to rise with her, metaphorically, lifting her spirit with their smiles. As they headed toward the exit, the customers applauded again. Not for Stephen, not even for the confrontation, but for the girl, for her courage, her forgiveness, her strength. Outside, the night felt cool and peaceful. The police cruisers were gone. The bullies were long gone. Only the faint glow of the diner lights remained. The girl tapped Stephen's sleeve gently and pointed to the sky. Stars scattered across the darkness like tiny diamonds. She wrote one more thing. Tonight was scary, but also beautiful. Stephen read her message and nodded. Yes, he said, because people learned something tonight. The girl tilted her head, curious. That strength isn't measured by size, Stephen continued. Power isn't about fists. And silence doesn't mean weakness. She smiled softly. As they reached the sidewalk, a couple walking a dog recognized Stephen. Phones went up instantly. Sir, is it true you protected that deaf girl? What happened inside? You're trending everywhere. Stephen raised a hand gently. Please, this wasn't about me. He turned to the girl. It was about her. She blinked in surprise as he continued. Because she was strong enough to walk into that diner alone. Strong enough to face cruelty. Strong enough to forgive what most people couldn't. The couple lowered their phones, moved by his words. Stephen gave the girl a gentle nod. People will talk about this. They'll share it. They'll learn from it. She wrote one final sentence. Then I'm glad they saw. Stephen placed a hand over his heart in respect. As they parted ways, she heading home, Stephen walking toward his car. The world around them seemed quieter, softer, better. And by the next morning, The video would be everywhere. Millions would watch it. Millions would see the cruelty, but also the courage. And they would type the same word again and again in the comments. Respect. Because no one should be mocked for being different. Because kindness is stronger than cruelty. Because silence can still speak loudly. And because that night, in a small diner, a brave girl and a quiet protector reminded the world what humanity is supposed to look like.